Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you that are looking to create your own quiz or test app and aren't quite sure where to get started, stay tuned. I'm going to be covering the basics in this video. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, the quick 10-second rundown, Appgyver is a free platform. I have tons of tutorials on my channel, but it's free as long as you're making 10 million or less in revenue. I believe those are the numbers, so you can check their website and the pricing page to verify. But you can create mobile apps, so these can be web apps, apps for iOS or Android. So we're going to cover the basics today. So right here, I have a single page and I'll walk you through. We're going to make a 2-question app. However, you can follow the same logic for 10 questions, 20, it doesn't really matter. So you have a couple of choices. So first you need to basically develop your test. There are tons of different options you can use to make things more or less dynamic or complicated. So for example, you could implement if-then statements, you could use drop-down fields, checkboxes, sliders, input fields for short answer questions, things of that nature. But I'm going to create an application that can be used offline. So this basically is just going to have everything stored within the app. So what I have done so far is I have the title and text right here, so you can just drag the components over. And then I have added a container, and inside the container I stacked 4 rows. So you can drag the row over, and if you've seen some of my other videos, you know we can put a button in, and then we can drag text over, and then we have basically this mirrors what's up here. So you would select the button and change the label, and then you would select the text and change the content, and then you can stack this. So you now have essentially a button, an answer option, button, answer option, and it would repeat all the way down. So the idea here is I put it in a container to make it easier to maneuver. So you'll see when we collapse or expand the container, those details show up. But the idea here is I can copy this container into the next page, and it reduces the need to have to follow all those steps all over again. Next up, we're going to add our variables. So we can click this slider. We can choose answer, question, question. So what you do is you just click add app variable, and then you choose basically to name your variables. So I called mine answer, question 1, and question 2. So the idea here is however many questions you have, you can set this logic up however you prefer. So what we're going to do is on this page, we're going to assign essentially the correct answer option. So I'm going to choose answer B, which will be this button. So when we click this button, what we want to do is we want to set an app variable. And we'll connect these two, and we'll choose answer, and we will choose question 1 and click save. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign the value of 50 because it's a 2-question test. So 50% for right, 50% for wrong. If you want, you could do 1 and 2 and kind of develop out that logic later. But if you had a 5-question test, this value would be 20 because it's 20% per question. So I'm going to go ahead and click save here. And then essentially when you choose these answer options here, what we'll do is we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to set the app variable. And I'm sure you guessed at this point, we are just going to be setting it to 0. So we'll do question 1, assigned value is 0. And what we'll do is we'll copy this. So we can hit Control-C, I believe it's Command-C on a Mac, and then you can paste it in. And we're going to do the same thing. So the idea is if you get the question correct, the value is 0. And if you get the question wrong, if you get the question correct, it's 50 or whatever that amount is. And if you get it wrong, the value is 0. And you would adjust those values based on whatever it is that you need. And then you can copy and paste these so that we have variable question 1, assigned value is 0. So I also recommend you double check this work because if you accidentally choose a different variable, it can mess up the flow and be harder to track down later. So we have this set up. So I'm going to now copy this container, and then we are going to go over to empty page, and we're going to create a new page. So we'll call this page 2, and we'll click OK. So now we will go up here, and I'm sure you guessed, we're just going to name this, and we'll just put question, and then we will put select C, because we're going to make the correct option C here. And now we're going to click paste, and all of a sudden, you see everything here changed. So this just basically pasted in that container. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to answer option B, because we now need to change this to make this the incorrect answer option. And then we're going to go to C and change this to be the correct answer option. So we'll just add 50 there. So we now have the question 1. One thing to consider at this point, if you think, okay, we're ready to skip ahead, bear in mind that we've changed the variable to question 1. So if you paste this in, one of the dangers of copying and pasting is don't forget that you need to change the variable. So if we had set this to variable or question 1, we would basically overwrite whatever the previous answer was. So the issue here is if you come up with a very long test, and at some point you skip this step of making sure that you're referring to question variable 2 or 3, then you start overwriting and then potentially giving people incorrect final test results, so to speak. So what we're going to do is make sure that we have question 2 selected for all of these and click save. Now, at this point, what we're going to want to do is we're going to add in a button, and we'll call this finish and click save. And the last thing is to make a results page. And we will put, so what we'll do here is we're going to do another row, and we'll bring this over on one side, and we'll bring a text on the other side. So what we'll do here is we will put your result. And then here, we'll just delete this text, and what we can do is put data and variables, app variable, answer, save. And then, well, here we can just put result, and if you want, you can go to layout and basically change the position to make this center. But the idea here is we want to show the users how they did. So we can go to layout and we'll just center this. And then another thing to note, which we'll go over in a bit, but we're going to cover some formula work. So on the first page, we need to have a link to the second page, because once they've chosen the answer option, they haven't really done anything. They're stuck on that page. So here we can add in a button, and we'll put, you could do anything really. For example, if you wanted, you could put an arrow of some kind. We'll just do that. And then we'll go to the logic for the button down here, and we will go to open page. And then we are going to open the page question 2, or page 2. Now, on this quiz, we are not going to allow people to go back. So when we go to this finish option, we're going to click here, and we're going to open up the page results. Now, the option here to consider is if you wanted a back button, you could add it. So when you select the answer option, you're changing that variable in real time. So the idea here is when you select A, it's setting that variable to 0. When you then select C, it overwrites it and selects it to, or changes it to 50. So the last thing that we really need to do is calculate the results and display it for the user. So this option here, the content is already answer. Now, what we need to do is calculate what the answer actually is. So effectively, we need an equation to say the answer is blank plus blank. So we're going to go back a page, and we'll have the answer get calculated when we click finish. So you'll see here, finish opens the page results. But maybe before we do that, we want to set the app variable. So you'll see this is where you can use different flow functions. So we'll set the app variable first, then go to the next page. So when we go to set app variable, it defaulted to answer, which is correct. And now we need to assign the value. So we're going to go to formula, and we're going to paste something in here. So I have this function, which I will paste below in the description, but I copied this over just to save us some time. Now, when I have been using this function in the past, I made sure to specify the number for a reason. So we'll break this down in a second, but what we're going to do first is make sure to update this function. So basically with these functions, you have add, and then in parentheses, so this larger set of parentheses is convert whatever's in parentheses next to a number, which is the variable, and then convert whatever's in parentheses next to a variable. And it's telling us to add these two. So I don't really like the red because it shows that there's an error. So what we're going to do is we're just going to delete this. And then if you want to auto insert variables, what we can do is we can go to app variables. We'll choose question 1. And then here we can choose question 2. So effectively what this is doing is it's saying we're going to add this, making sure it's a number, to this, making sure it's a number. So if you wanted to, you could use this same function and you could use a comma, number, and then you would put in the next app variable. So this would be app vars dot, let's just say question 3. And you can repeat this as much as you need to. So this is just a generic, we'll just say like an add statement to say, okay, we need to add all of this together. And then you also just need to make sure that you're closing out your parentheses correctly. So we have one parenthesis set here, one set of parentheses here, and then all of that is contained within this here. So we're going to click save, and now the answer option should be set correctly. So at this point, we can go ahead and test this out and kind of see how it looks. So we will go to Launch, Preview, Open App Preview Portal, and we will choose this quiz option. So we're going to select the right answer. So for this one, we put B, but we're just going to try A to see what happens and click Next. And we're going to choose C, which is the correct option here, and we'll click Finish. Your result is 50. So now let's try going back and let's try getting both answers correct. So we'll choose B, Next, C, Finish. And you see result is 100%. Now if you want to view this similar to how it'd be viewed on, let's just say, a mobile device, you can right click and click Inspect, and you'll get a slightly more easy to use interface. So here we're going to select both answers as incorrect. We're going to choose A and then A and finish. Your result 0. So everything's populating correctly. Now, if you were interested, you have some other choices. For example, if you want to show it as a percentage, we can go to the results screen. And then here, where it says content, answer option is this variable, we can go back to select binding and choose formula. And you'll see this is formula and it shows app vars answer. We can do space plus and then put a parentheses in quotes. So I'll show you what this does. When we click save and we go back to Open App Preview Portal, quiz, we're going to choose A and we'll choose C, and you'll see your result 50%. So it is showing the variable, and then it's treating this percentage sign basically as just text and pasting it side by side. If you wanted a space, then when you put the double quotes, you would need to add a space and then the percentage sign. So again, when you're doing this, you have the option to make this as many questions as you want. So we could follow this logic and make this a 5-question test. Each question would then be 20% each. If we made it a 10-question test, each question would be 10% each. So regardless of how many questions you have, it doesn't really matter. The point is you can follow this logic. The only difference is what value are you assigning here? So the assigned value is the percentage correct. You could, if you wanted, make them a point apiece and do math and display the math at the end and show, okay, you got 10 questions right, convert 10 to percentage. It just seems easier to do it this way, at least for me. So again, if you wanted to have a 20 question test or 50 question test, you can do the math on your end to figure out what percentage each question is worth, and then you can offer to kind of grade that out and then show the result at the end. Now, you can make this even more advanced if you're interested. For example, if you wanted to, you could show the question 1 result, question 2 result. So you could show, we'll just say like a breakdown. So you could put text here and say something like overview. And then you put, so I enjoy using the rows. I think they're really easy. So we'll put question text in each. And then you could do another row. And then you could put text here and then text here. And then we could put question 1. And we'll put question 2. And then you could assign the app variables here. So we will go to data and variables, app variable, question 1. And basically what we're going to do is we could show the user, here's how you performed, and show them what they got per question. So this will be one of the last things we'll try out before we kind of wrap things up here. So we'll go to preview. And then if you go to quiz, we'll choose B, which is the correct answer, and we'll choose B again, which is incorrect. And you'll see your result overall is 50%. Overview, question 1, you got a 50. Question 2, you got a 0. So you could make this look a little bit better if you wanted to add in dividers and tables and things of that nature. And if you're interested, you can also use the API video, which I will paste in the description. This will allow you to make this more dynamic. So if you want to change answer options over time, then you could store these as data variables. In theory, you will be able to use, you will be able to use everything that you've learned in this video, and then you can just swap out the app variables for the page variable or for the data variables. So watch that API video, take a look at it. The tricky part with the APIs is the more people that are using it, the more likely you are to essentially get bumped out of a free plan in something like Firebase and have to start paying. So storing them as app variables, the benefit is it's free and can be used offline. The downside is you have to release a new version of the app. So you would have to release an update to add in quizzes or tests and things of that nature. So consider what's best for you. Take a look at the other API video. You can follow these exact same instructions. And again, when you're just at that final step, so basically, you would need to have custom variables for each user. So that would be a little bit trickier because you need to store things locally, but read them from somewhere else. So you would still probably want to store the variables locally, but read the correct answer from essentially the cloud or from the database. So we'll give you a very, very quick overview of how you would do this. If you have these 4 answer options here, then you would have answer option A, B, C, and D. So if you go to the logic for each, you would set the assigned value. So you have a couple of things to consider. You have the variable name is question 2, and you're setting this value to whatever is correct. So we would be assigning the value from the data variable. So let's make some sense of this. We want to keep the variable as an app variable. So we're going to store the answer locally. So if you like the system that we have here that we've already covered, so we'll summarize this really quickly. This app that I have made right here can be done offline, and it's using app variables and would require releases or new updates every single time you want to update the answer choices or questions and things of that nature. If you like that, then you can stop the video here, go ahead and make more questions, use different types of form options or components, and you're all set. Now, if you want to be able to change the questions almost in real time or in real time, follow the API video in the description. And then what you're going to do is you still likely will want to store the answer locally because you don't want users to overwrite other users' test answers. So what you would do here is you have answer A, B, C, D. If you selected the answer option and we go to the logic, what you're going to do is the variable name, this would stay an app variable, question 2. Nothing would change there because we're going to be storing this locally. So that's really all that there is to that. But what you're assigning is the value that's pulled from the database. So let's just say you have question 2 in Firebase and it's being pulled in via API. You would choose data variables, data variable, and you would select either 0 or 50. So I would recommend having the variable in Firebase correct and incorrect. Correct would be 0, or correct would be 50, incorrect would be 0. And you would assign that value here. So one last time to kind of summarize here is basically just letting you know, for each of these questions, you want to store them as an app variable locally. Likely going to be the best option for you. But if you're storing the values in Firebase, you would assign the value and make sure that it's assigned as a data variable. So the correct answer would be in Firebase, and then the incorrect answer would be in Firebase, and they would assign that 0 and 50% value. And then you would be able to assign whatever that value is here separately. So for example, if you're setting this one to the data variable for correct, then you would change that over time and you would do the same here. So for example, we have this variable and we've set this variable name to question 2. We're assigning the value correct. We would basically just swap that out for incorrect at any point. So you could swap these variables within the back end. So you're going to need to test that logic and make sure that things are set up correctly because it'll get a little bit confusing if you have the incorrect variables or setups. So make sure that you consider that a little bit more. So again, consider the logic behind it because it's not that simple. I'm just trying to get you started. Have the variable set up in Firebase, assign the variable to the local storage, but assign the value from Firebase. So figure out how you can get that set up on your end. We could call that some like homework, so to speak, but that would be a really cool way for you to kind of take this to another level. Again, bearing in mind that you need to make sure that when the variables are changed, make sure to test this. When you have this set up in Firebase, make sure that when you change the variable in Firebase, the logic is set up to where the variable changes in real time here. And then you could also make these answer options data variables in Firebase as well. Just make sure as you're changing what's right and what's wrong, you're testing it in the app in real time as well, because it's possible to set this up to where you change the variable in Firebase, but maybe that doesn't actually change here. So the easiest route, if you want to avoid confusion, would be to set this accordingly. So it would be smarter to set A, B, C, D in Firebase. So question 1A, question 1B, question 1C, question 1D, and then assign question 1A is 50, question 1B 0, question 1C is 0, question 1D is 0. And then you change their corresponding values. Because if you have correct and incorrect, when you change the values for correct and incorrect, it's not going to update all of these questions. So that would probably be the easier route, just kind of brainstorming that on my end. I think that would be the best route for you. It is going to require a little bit more labor-intensive work for Firebase or whatever database storage, but it's going to make a lot more sense in the long term to have question 1A, and then when you have the logic, the variable is set up to be local storage, so you're just going to save it just like we have, but the assigned value is the data variable question 1A. The assigned variable here would be data variable for question 1B. The assigned variable for C, question 1C, and those are the values from Firebase stored locally, and then you'll do the math on the local storage. So hopefully that was able to help you all. I know that last bit was a little bit confusing, and I do apologize about that. But again, when you're working with data variables and doing something like this and performing in-app calculations, it can be a lengthier process. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in the box below, and I will see you all in the next video.